So if you've been playing League of Legends recently, you probably have noticed that a lot of people are playing AP Rakan mid, even in some ranked games at times. And the reason for this is because in patch 8.6, he got some AP ratio buffs on his damage dealing abilities, which actually gave him a decent chunk of damage because he did have really good AP ratios before. He already has a 90% ratio on his shield passive and an 80% ratio on his E and a decent 50% ratio on his ult. So adding these extra AP ratios has pushed him over the edge to be played mid lane with full AP. And honestly, in my opinion, right now I think he is completely broken, but not in the way that you might think. Previous champions that have been broken and unbalanced, like Launch Zoe or Galio when he got those insane AP ratio buffs on his Q, they are just straight up broken. You build the AP, you don't even have to be good on a champion, you just destroy everybody. But with Rakan, he has some major weaknesses because he is a support and he can't really wave clear that well. So he is broken, but only after you get past a certain threshold. And today I'm making this video to tell you how to get past that threshold, how to get past his completely weak and trash phase to become godlike and just carry games completely like you see in this footage. So the problem with AP Rakan is that he cannot clear waves. The only way he can clear waves is with his Q and his W, and you usually need that to poke people down in lane, and his autos don't really do much. He does have some good base AD to last hit, but that's about it. So in the early laning phase, you are always going to lose lane. You're always going to be weak because these mages are designed to punish people in lane and have decent wave clear. But there's an easy way to get around this with the new AP items. Proto Belt and Luden's Echo basically can make any champion who clears shit make their clear pretty decent. So what you always want to rush on Rakan right now is Proto Belt and Luden's Echo. Little to no exceptions. And before we move on, I do want to talk about a couple items that I don't think are core to this build, but I do think are pretty useful, and I've taken them myself, and I do think they're pretty good. One is Ardent Sensor. The reason I take that is because something I frequently have trouble with AP Rakan is that after you do your full combo, there is kind of a window of time where you're just auto-attacking, waiting for your cooldowns to go off. So at this time, I usually like to take Ardent Sensor just so I have that extra attack speed passive, and then I'm also buffing my shields and heals and getting some AP and helping my allies out and all that shit. So definitely a great like support mage kind of hybrid item. And then the next item is Unholy Grail. Can help a lot with healing your teammates, can help a lot with some extra damage from the passive and just the AP you get from it in general. Those two items, they're still support items, but I do think they have a very good use on a full AP Rakan build. And then there's, of course, the two great situational AP items of Zhonya's Hourglass and Banshee's Veil. The active/passive on both of those items are very good on Rakan, and if you're having some trouble versus those high AD or high AP damage dealers, these are great items to get. But there's a lot more that goes into playing him right than just building the right items, because obviously there's going to be a time where you are weak and you don't have those items, and during that time you still can do some pretty decent things, but you basically still kind of have to play like a support. Your Q, which you're going to be maxing, does a decent amount of damage in lane, but besides that, you're not really able to burst people down without the help of your junglers. So with this pick in particular, if you do want to carry in solo queue, I will highly recommend you get a duo queue jungler with you, especially if you are in low gold, silver, bronze, where people don't really synergize and play towards teamwork unless they are duo queued. So what you'll want to do is just stay safe in lane, use your Q to poke people out and heal, and then wait for your jungler to gank to get a guaranteed kill. Especially once you hit 6, you can just Alt W, get a nice chain CC, and have your jungler gank for you and get a kill almost every time without anyone dying, because Rakan is still a support. He still has his E, which can help a lot towards buffing your ally, and same with your Q heal, which you will be maxing, so you will have a decent amount of damage and heal on that by the time they do end up ganking. So once you hit level 3 and get your E, you just call your jungler to gank, they come in, boom, bam, guaranteed kill. Pretty much OP and unable to be stopped, because usually when a jungler ganks a mid laner. They don't have that type of synergy. So a big problem with ganks and what defines a good jungler from a bad jungler is when they gank relative to where their ally is. Usually when you want to gank, you don't want your ally to be far back into their turret, you know, trying to farm up, trying to stay alive, and then you just go in trying to 1v1 their enemy mid laner. But with Rakan, with his E, it's basically a gap closer to the jungler, so no matter where Rakan is in lane, he can basically catch up to the jungler and then start kicking ass with his dashes. So Rakan, paired with any jungler, just decimates the enemy. But without that gank, Rakan is very weak. So during the laning phase, you do want to abuse this with a duo partner. And this is how you will have the edge on your enemy and how you will become absolutely insane late game. Because after you do this a couple times, the enemy's mental is going to be completely fucked. And also, you will have finished your first 2 items and you can start building some real AP to get some insane ratios. After you get Proto Belt and Luden's Echo, you get Rabadon's Death Cap. Your shields and heals are completely insane.
Yeah,
holy shit, wait, what happened? Oh my god. Did you see that? Dude, that needs to... Oh my god. Your damage is basically on par with most AP mages, if not a little lower, just because he's gated a lot by cooldowns, which you will be getting full cooldown reduction through the first 2 items and runes. And the damage is nice, especially if you can get all your abilities onto all 5 enemies and just fuck them up with your ult and your W. But what really is important with your AP ratios is your 80% scaling on your E, and you're scaling on your heal, and you're scaling on your passive shield. This makes you extremely tanky, it makes all your allies extremely tanky, and it makes it so you can have some Soraka level heals, because once you have 40% CDR on your Q, it's at a 3-second cooldown. You just spam that shit all the time, and you basically have the equivalent of Tear of the Goddess Tara heal, or a Soraka heal, where it's just like almost constant throughout the entire fight. And even when you don't have that heal, you can basically give people half health shields with your E. You're basically borderline OP. Full of CC, full of heal, just completely ludicrous. There's been so many games that I'm showing you throughout this footage. My team is losing, we are completely getting trashed on, but guess what? I got Rabadon's Death Cap, and all the enemy is grouped up because they are trying to kill the Nexus. So I just go in, pop off, none of my allies die, and we just completely win the game off that, especially if you have another champion like Yasuo in the game. Holy shit, I've had some Yasuo tops in my games while I play AP Rakan mid, and in the late game when you hit that full knock-up, and then Yasuo can just follow through and you do all your abilities, it's impossible. I've even played against Rakan before as Skarner, where I thought I could abuse his laning phase. I did, but he got past the laning phase, he got Rabadon's Death Cap, and they actually had an enemy Soraka, so what happened was they just got instantly healed and got instantly shielded, and they completely decimated a team fight. This is an almost unstoppable combo. AP Rakan is absolutely insane. Kind of similar to Kale in a way, where you're completely useless or pretty useless until you get some core items, but once you get those core items, you become godlike. But with Rakan, it's definitely much more onto the godlike side than Kale, but it's still that same sort of playstyle. So it still does take a couple games to get used to his last hitting and playing safe and being basically a bitch for the first 20 minutes. But once you get past that, AP Rakan mid is the shit. It is so fun, it is so OP, and I hope you guys can take this advice and use it in your future games. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. But hold on one second, I actually forgot to talk about the runes. So, for the runes, there are 2 main pages. One is more focused for making up for Rakan's lack of damage, and the other is more focused on being kind of a cross between supporting your allies and dealing damage to your enemies. The second one is what I choose, but this is basically what the pages are. First one is Electrocute, Sudden Impact, anything on the second row, and then anything on the third row, although I do recommend Indigenous Hunter and maybe Relentless Hunter. Then you go Resolve with Bone Plating and Chrysalis. Now, the second page that I personally use is Summon Airy, Nullifying Orb, or unless you're against a bunch of AD, you could go Ultimate Hat. Then we have Transcendence, Gathering Storm, Chrysalis, and Revitalize. So this is just more focused on being a support for your allies with Summon Airy and Revitalize, but also still dealing damage by yourself, since Airy can still deal damage, Revitalize can still benefit yourself, and then of course you have Chrysalis and you have Transcendence to get 40% CDR once you hit 2 items, so you can spam your abilities better, including your shield abilities, but also, of course, your damage. And then Gathering Storm for more AP, and Nullifying Orb basically because there's nothing else better to go in the first row. Those are the runes. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye!